I didn't know how deep this rabbit hole went until I walked in on my husband in the bathtub with our neighbor. My name is Lena, and I'm 34 years old. I've always thought of myself as the black sheep of the family, growing up in a household where success was measured by everything external. Appearances, achievements, and status. I never quite fit the mold. My older brother, Daniel, was the perfect child. Ivy League degrees, a high-paying job in finance, and a picture-perfect family. Me, I'm just a small-town lawyer trying to survive in a city that's always felt like a jungle. I'd always felt that no matter what I did, it would never be enough to escape my brother's shadow. But this was something I never saw coming. I opened the door, expecting nothing more than the usual quiet of the afternoon. I had left my office early, hoping to catch Henry before he left for a meeting. Instead, I found something that would shatter my entire reality. The sound of running water came from the master bathroom, and I could hear faint voices muffled behind the door. I called out to Henry, expecting him to answer, but there was nothing. Something about the silence felt wrong. Too still, like a storm holding its breath. I tried the door. It was locked. A surge of unease coursed through me. My first instinct was to knock, to yell, but something told me not to. Maybe it was the way the house felt too quiet, or maybe it was the way Henry had been acting over the past few weeks, distant, secretive. I pushed the door slightly open. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat. There they were, Henry and Rachel, the neighbor who lived 2 houses down, naked in my bathtub, tangled in a way I never thought I'd see them. The steam from the water blurred the outline of their bodies, but I couldn't look away. Their faces were lost in a kiss, unaware that I was standing there, my heart sinking with every passing second. I felt paralyzed. For a moment, it didn't seem real. It was like watching a scene in a movie, something that wasn't happening in my life, but in someone else's. But then Rachel's eyes opened. They locked with mine. Her face shifted from passion to pure horror in an instant. Henry turned toward me, his expression freezing in panic. His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Lena," he whispered, like saying my name could undo everything. The calmness I felt was unnerving. The flood of emotions didn't come as expected. Anger, betrayal, sorrow, they were there, but they were distant. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I just felt cold, detached. "Stay exactly where you are," I said, my voice steady, as if I had already accepted what I was seeing. "Don't move." Henry made a move to get out of the tub. "Lena, please. Let's talk. I can explain." "Don't," I interrupted, the words coming out sharper than I intended. The weight of the situation was still sinking in, but something in me snapped. I wasn't going to let them off easy. I wasn't the naive woman I'd been earlier that morning. Without another word, I turned and walked away, locking the door behind me. I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to them. The sounds of their panicked whispers filtered through the bathroom door. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to know what they were saying. I already knew the truth. I reached for my phone. My hands shook as I dialed Jacob, Rachel's husband. His voice on the other end sounded confused when he answered, but I didn't have time for explanations. "Come here," I said, my voice colder than I thought possible. "There's something you need to see." As I ended the call, I felt a strange calm wash over me. This was no longer just about betrayal. This was about something much bigger. I didn't know what I would find once Jacob arrived, but I knew one thing for sure. My life would never be the same again. The sirens in the distance were beginning to wail. They were too far away, but they sounded close. I glanced back at the locked door. Somewhere deep inside, I felt the weight of the lie I'd been living, the lie that had now exploded in my face. But there was something else, too, something I couldn't quite place, an eerie feeling, as if someone else was watching me. The sound of my breath was the only thing I could hear as I stood in front of the bathroom door, my phone still buzzing in my pocket. I could feel the weight of the decision I was about to make pressing down on me. Calling Jacob wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. This wasn't just about the betrayal. This was something much bigger. I didn't know how deep the lie ran, but I knew it would break me if I didn't take control now. My hand hovered over the door handle. The silence inside the bathroom was deafening, save for the muffled voices. Henry and Rachel were likely panicking, but I couldn't find the strength to feel sorry for them. I had spent years making excuses for Henry's behavior, brushing off the late nights, the strange calls, the way he seemed to pull further and further away from me. But today was different. Today, everything was coming to light. I pulled the door open, just enough to slip through. The room was steamy, filled with the scent of my expensive body wash. The sight hit me like a slap across the face. Rachel was still in the tub, her hair wet and tangled, her face pale. Henry, equally naked, stood frozen beside her, his eyes wide, his face contorted with panic. For a moment, we all just stared at each other. It was like time stood still. "Lena! I can explain," Henry finally stammered, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I couldn't even process his words. Rachel shifted uncomfortably, trying to cover herself, but the damage had already been done. I already knew everything I needed to know. "I'm calling Jacob," I said flatly, my voice colder than I thought I was capable of. "He needs to see this." Their eyes went wide. Henry moved toward me, his hands up in a pleading gesture. "No, Lena, don't. Please, let's just talk about this." But I didn't move. "You want to talk about it?" I asked, my voice shaking with a rage I was trying to control. "Tell me why, Henry. Why her? Why now?" Henry opened his mouth, but no words came. Instead, Rachel's voice broke through the silence, weak and trembling. "Lena, please, we didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." I didn't respond to her. I couldn't. I didn't care about their reasons. Nothing they said could erase the feeling of betrayal, the suffocating reality of what I was seeing. I slammed the door shut behind me and locked it. They were trapped inside. I felt a sense of calmness I didn't recognize. The kind of calm you get when you know you're done. Done with excuses. Done with pretending everything was fine. I turned around and dialed Jacob's number. The phone rang once, twice before he answered, his voice groggy, clearly startled by the urgency in my tone. "What's going on, Lena?" he asked, his voice still thick with sleep. "I need you to come here," I said, my throat tight. "I need you to see something." I could hear the confusion in his voice as he processed the words, but he didn't ask any more questions. "I'm on my way," he said, his tone flat now, more serious. I stood there, holding the phone, staring at the bathroom door, the silence between us deafening. The only sound was the faint murmur of voices from the other side of the door, desperate whispers that only added to the weight in my chest. Jacob arrived within minutes. He didn't knock. He just opened the door, his face full of concern. But the moment he saw me standing there, waiting for him, the concern shifted to something else, something darker. He followed me up the stairs, his footsteps too heavy in the silence that surrounded us. We reached the bathroom door, and I turned to face him. His face was pale, but there was no anger there, only confusion. He didn't know what to expect, but when I unlocked the door, the sound of the click seemed to echo too loudly in the hallway. The moment he saw Henry and Rachel, the color drained from his face. "What the hell is this, Lena?" he asked, his voice low, a mixture of disbelief and something deeper, something I couldn't quite place. He couldn't wrap his mind around the mess I had walked him into. Henry started talking before I could say anything. "Jacob, this isn't what it looks like." I didn't even flinch. I just shook my head, holding my ground. "Lena, please, just let us explain," Rachel begged from the other side of the room, but I could barely hear her over the pounding in my head. I didn't need an explanation. I didn't need anything from them. The reality was plain and clear. As I stood there, listening to the muffled, frantic pleas, something else, something deeper, began to gnaw at me. Why did this feel so planned? Why did it feel like they had been waiting for this moment, for me to finally catch them? The truth was, I couldn't trust anything anymore. The story they were feeding me didn't add up. There was more to this. So much more. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. And then Jacob's phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced at the screen and cursed under his breath. "Who is it?" I asked, my voice sharp. It's Mason," he said, his voice low. "My lawyer. He's telling me that there's been a breach, documents missing, sensitive stuff. Someone's been tampering with our files. I can't explain it right now, but we have to go." I froze. Mason? I had no idea why he'd suddenly appeared in this mess, but I didn't trust him. Something about his presence made my skin crawl. "Tell him to wait," I snapped, my heart pounding harder now. "We need to deal with this first." But Jacob was already walking toward the door. "Lena, there's something bigger going on here. We need to figure this out." "No," I hissed, feeling the tension spike inside me. "We deal with this first. Mason can wait." I could feel the walls closing in on me. My life, my marriage, and everything I thought I knew were crumbling around me, and there was no stopping it. The cracks were already too deep. And then it hit me. If Jacob was involved in this, if he knew what had happened, then nothing was what it seemed. Not even the man I'd trusted to be by my side. In the distance, a car door slammed. Someone else was coming, and I was pretty sure I knew who it was. I wasn't the only one with secrets. I felt the walls closing in on me. Every second that passed in that room made my skin crawl. Jacob stood by the door, his face unreadable, but I could see the tension in his jaw. He was hiding something, he had to be. The words they were saying didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the way they looked at me, like I was an obstacle, not a wife, not a partner. "You've got to be kidding me," Jacob muttered, his voice low, as he stepped back into the hallway. "This can't be real, Lena." I barely noticed his words. I could hear the whispers coming from behind the bathroom door. Henry and Rachel were still locked inside, pleading with each other now, their voices muffled but desperate. I couldn't trust them, not anymore. Not after what I had seen. And the truth was, I wasn't sure who to trust anymore. Jacob, Mason, Henry, or even myself. I stepped toward the window and peered out at the street below. The world was still turning out there, people going about their business, unaware of the chaos brewing inside my home. My home. My sanctuary. But nothing was safe anymore. The phone in my pocket vibrated, Mason. I didn't even want to look at it, but I did. "Lena, we need to talk. This is bigger than you think. I can help. Come to my office now." I felt a rush of heat spread through my chest. I didn't need his help. I needed answers. Mason had been a part of all of this, and I couldn't ignore that anymore. The way he'd been showing up unannounced, always in the background, too eager to offer his advice when Henry was away, it all clicked into place now. Mason was just another piece of the puzzle. I turned to Jacob. "We need to go to Mason's office. Right now." He blinked, taken aback. "You trust him?" "No," I said, my voice sharp. "But he's involved, and I'm done waiting around." I grabbed my purse and stepped toward the door, but as I reached for the handle, a chill ran down my spine. The doorbell rang. I froze, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Who the hell could that be? Everyone who knew what was going on was inside the house, or at least they should have been. I didn't want to answer it, but something told me I had no choice. I opened the door, and there, standing on the other side, was Detective Grant. His presence hit me like a ton of bricks. "Lena," he said, his voice calm, too calm for the situation. "I think we need to talk." I could barely catch my breath. My mind raced. The detective who had been assigned to my case weeks ago had always felt like he was one step ahead of me, too helpful, too involved. And now here he was, standing in my doorway as if everything was normal. I tried to compose myself. "What do you want, Grant?" "Not here," he said, his eyes scanning the hallway as if someone else might be lurking nearby. "Can we talk privately?" My skin prickled. "No, we talk here." He sighed. stepping forward without waiting for an invitation. I think you're in danger, Lena, and I need you to trust me. He closed the door behind him, his face serious. The deeper you dig into Henry's business, the more dangerous this becomes. You've already made some enemies. You don't want to make more. I didn't know what to say. All I could think about was the twisted mess I was caught in. The affair was just the surface. What Henry had really been up to, it was far worse than I'd ever imagined. Grant's voice broke through my thoughts. I've been following the money. The connections go way beyond your husband. People in very high places are involved, Lena. This isn't just about infidelity. It's about something far bigger. His words were like ice water in my veins. What are you talking about? I whispered, my heart hammering. Who are you protecting? Not protecting anyone, he replied, his gaze shifting uncomfortably. I'm just telling you what you're up against. There's a network, corruption, financial crimes, and people who won't hesitate to silence anyone in their way. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. You're telling me my husband's not just cheating on me. He's involved in something criminal. Grant hesitated for a moment before answering. It's worse than that. A cold silence settled between us. I could feel the weight of his words, the pressure mounting inside me. The air felt thick with tension. Grant was no longer the ally I had thought he was. His presence felt like another layer of the web I was caught in, another puppet master pulling strings from behind the scenes. Before I could respond, the phone in my hand buzzed again. It was a message from Mason. I didn't need to read it. I already knew what it said. He was waiting for me. Grant caught the glance at my phone. You're going to go see him, aren't you? I didn't answer. There was no need. I needed answers. But I also needed to be careful. Because now, it wasn't just my husband I couldn't trust. It was the people who had been in my life all along. People who had been hiding things from me, lying to me, using me. And the worst part was, I didn't know how deep it all went. I'll go to his office, I said, my voice a whisper. But you're coming with me. Grant gave me a small nod, as if he had expected my answer. He turned to leave, but before he could open the door, I heard a sound, a soft knock. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Who's that? I asked, my voice barely audible. Grant's eyes narrowed. Stay here, he said, pulling me back from the door. But I didn't listen. I stepped forward, my hand on the knob. I opened the door. Standing there in the darkened hallway was Rachel. She was holding something in her hands, something I couldn't quite see in the dim light. I know what you're trying to do, Lena, Rachel said softly, her voice trembling. But you're not going to win. I froze, and then the darkness in her eyes became clear. This wasn't just a game anymore. I didn't have time to think. The moment Rachel stepped into my house, her eyes cold and calculating, my pulse quickened. The door behind her closed with a soft click. I could feel the tension coil around me, suffocating the air. Every step she took made the world around me grow smaller. Lena, you don't understand what you're doing, Rachel said softly, her voice laced with something I couldn't quite place, something almost rehearsed. I said nothing. The silence between us stretched, the weight of everything that had happened pressing on my chest. I didn't want to engage with her. I couldn't. I was done with the lies, done with the games. But the more I stared at her, the more I realized Rachel wasn't just Henry's lover. She was the architect of something far more dangerous. I never meant for it to get this far, she continued, her gaze flickering toward the bathroom door as though Henry were still inside, waiting for her. But you need to stop digging. You don't know what you're up against. I let out a sharp breath. I know exactly what I'm up against, Rachel. You, Henry, the lies. Everything. The words were sharp, laced with anger and disgust. But then, as though she were preparing for something worse, Rachel's expression softened. It's not just about you and Henry. It's about the bigger picture, the one you're too blind to see. Something in her eyes, The vulnerability, the hint of desperation, caught my attention. I needed to know what she meant. My instincts screamed at me to turn around, to run, but I was already too deep. The house felt smaller, the walls too close. I couldn't breathe. A car engine revved outside, loud against the silence. But I didn't look. I knew what was coming. Another twist. Another push toward the unknown. "I've been following your moves," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're playing with fire, Lena. They're watching you. All of you." The words hit like a cold wind. They weren't just about Henry. They were about something far bigger. Something I didn't understand. I stared at her, feeling my heart race, a coldness washing over me. I couldn't bring myself to say anything, but I could feel it, the truth creeping toward me, but staying just out of reach. "What do you want from me?" I finally asked, my voice strained. She smiled, the smile of someone who had already won. "Nothing, Lena. It's too late. You're already in it." Just as I was about to respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from upstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of a door opening. My heart skipped a beat. I glanced at Rachel, but her face remained unchanged. She didn't move, didn't react. "I need to get to Mason," I said, my voice firm despite the dread that was beginning to gnaw at me. Rachel stepped toward me, blocking my path. "Mason isn't going to save you. He's not the man you think he is." I didn't have time to think. I shoved past her and rushed toward the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. I had to get to Mason. I had to uncover what was really happening. I turned the corner, my eyes scanning the front yard through the window. The street outside was still, the faint sound of a siren echoing in the distance, too far away to matter. I gripped my phone tightly in my hand and dialed Mason's number. The call went straight to voicemail. "Of course," I muttered under my breath. I hung up and checked my messages, but there was nothing new from Jacob, nothing from Henry. The air felt thick with something I couldn't quite name. The walls were closing in on me. There were too many questions and not enough answers. I had to act fast, but the more I thought about the last few days, the more I realized I had no idea who was really in control. Just then, the front door creaked open behind me. I turned around, a chill running down my spine. My pulse quickened as I saw Detective Grant standing in the doorway. "Lena," he said, his voice low, almost apologetic. "We need to talk." The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I had expected Mason. Hell, I had expected Henry, but not Grant. Not now. I tried to stay calm, but my mind raced. "What are you doing here, Grant? You've already done enough damage." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he stepped further into the room, his eyes scanning the space before settling on me. His face was tense, tight with something I couldn't read. "I've been trying to protect you," he said, his voice a little too steady. "But this is bigger than you think. It's bigger than all of us." The air between us seemed to thicken. My brain screamed at me to stay in control, to push him out, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than I could see. "I'm done with the lies," I snapped, stepping back. "I don't need anyone protecting me." Grant's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand what's happening, Lena. You're at the center of something much darker. I didn't come here to make excuses, but you need to listen." I shook my head. "What are you talking about?" "Henry didn't just get involved in something illegal. He's been working with people who have a lot to lose. People who won't stop until they've destroyed everything in their path." My mind was spinning, the pieces starting to fall into place, but I couldn't make sense of it. Was Henry really just a pawn in this? Had he been dragged into something too big for him to get out of? I took a deep breath. "So what's your plan, Grant? To protect me again? Or to keep me out of the way so you and your people can finish what you started?" Grant's eyes flickered with something I couldn't identify, but his jaw clenched. "It's not about me. It's about you staying alive." The sound of tires screeching outside made my heart skip a beat. Grant's expression hardened. "Get in the car. Now." I turned and saw Mason standing outside. a smirk on his face as he watched us. The moment I saw him, the realization hit me. This wasn't about saving me. This was about controlling me. I didn't hesitate. I ran. I barely managed to get out the door before my heart was in my throat, pounding as though it was trying to escape. Every second, I felt the eyes on me, watching, waiting. It was a feeling I hadn't felt since I was a kid, sneaking into places I wasn't supposed to be. But this time, the stakes were much higher. The world outside my house seemed untouched by the chaos I'd just discovered. Cars drove past, people walked by on their phones, oblivious to the fact that my life was unraveling right there, just a few blocks away. I could hear my breath, ragged, as I forced myself to walk faster, to act like everything was fine, even though nothing was. Grant was still with me, trailing a step behind. His silence was deafening, his presence suffocating. The man I had trusted had his hands in this mess. I didn't know how far it went, but I could feel it in my bones. I had been played, and I couldn't even see the endgame yet. "Mason's expecting you," Grant said, his voice low, but not entirely comforting. It felt more like a warning. "You shouldn't have come this far." I snapped my head toward him, fury flashing in my chest. "I don't need you to protect me, Grant. You didn't protect me before. You've been part of the problem this whole time." Grant didn't flinch. "I'm not here to protect you, Lena. I'm here to help you understand what you're up against." The words felt like ice, the truth sinking in deeper. He wasn't on my side. He was on his own side, just like everyone else. I couldn't trust anyone, not even him. We reached the car, and I slid into the passenger seat, barely waiting for Grant to get in before I slammed the door shut. The moment the car engine roared to life, the tension in the air thickened, suffocating me. My hands trembled as I gripped my phone. Mason had been calling nonstop, his messages a barrage of urgency. He knew. He had to know I was on to something. But what? Grant's eyes were on the road, focused. I turned to watch him, trying to read his face, but it was stone cold. "What's Mason really involved in, Grant? And why the hell did you think you could keep me out of this?" He didn't answer, but I could see his jaw tighten. The city blurred around us as we made our way toward Mason's office. It was late in the evening, the streets mostly empty, but the feeling of being watched never left. I couldn't shake the sensation that someone, somewhere, had eyes on me. The paranoia gnawed at me. Was I being followed? "Lena!" Grant finally spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't understand the scope of this. Mason's not just some corporate lawyer. He's connected to things that go beyond what you can imagine. People who would do anything to keep their secrets safe." I felt the weight of his words sink in. My mind raced. "And you? What's your part in this, Grant?" His grip on the steering wheel tightened. "I didn't sign up for this, but it's too late to back out now. You're too deep in." We pulled up to Mason's building, a sleek, modern glass structure that stood in stark contrast to the older buildings surrounding it. The place was quiet, too quiet. My stomach churned as I stepped out of the car, my heels clicking sharply against the pavement. The darkness of the night seemed to envelop us, like the world was holding its breath. I could feel Grant's eyes on me, but I didn't look back. I wasn't going to let him have control anymore. This was my life, my choices. As I approached the entrance, the door swung open. Mason stood in the doorway, his posture perfect, but his eyes filled with something colder than I remembered. He was waiting. He knew I would come. "Mason," I said, forcing the word through my clenched teeth. "Lena," he replied, his voice smooth but strained. "We need to talk." I stepped inside, my heart beating too loudly in my chest. The room was dark, lit only by the cold light of a desk lamp. Papers were scattered across the floor, and the air smelled faintly of cigar smoke and leather. Mason gestured for me to sit, but I didn't. I couldn't. "You've been looking into things you shouldn't have," Mason said, his voice casual, but there was a hard edge to it. And now you're going to make this worse. You don't know what you're dealing with. I didn't sit down. I stood there, forcing myself to meet his eyes. What is it, Mason? What's going on? What have you and Henry really been doing? Mason's smile didn't reach his eyes. You're too late, Lena. You should have stayed out of this. I clenched my fists. No more lies. Tell me everything. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping the desk. It's not just about Henry's mess. There are powerful people involved, people who'll burn everything down to keep their secrets. Your husband, he's not just a pawn. He's a key player. And now so are you. I felt the floor beneath me shift. What do you mean? Mason paused, his eyes narrowing. You're not just married to Henry anymore. You're tangled in something much bigger than your marriage. You're part of the game now. The weight of his words pressed on me like a physical force. My heart pounded in my chest. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. This wasn't just about my husband anymore. It was about power, control, and the kind of people who would destroy anyone who stood in their way. Then what do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely audible. He leaned forward, his eyes cold. I want you to stop digging. Stop trying to find the truth. Because if you keep going, there won't be anyone left to protect you. The air seemed to freeze. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. Grant stepped forward, his hand on my shoulder. Lena, listen to him. You're in over your head. The fear surged inside me, mixing with the anger and confusion. I didn't know who to trust anymore. I didn't know where to turn. But one thing was clear. This was just the beginning. The door slammed behind me. They echo a stark contrast to the silence that enveloped the room. I had been running on adrenaline for hours. No, for days. And now, standing in front of Mason's office, I felt the weight of everything crash down on me. The betrayal, the lies, the years of trusting people who were never worthy of it. It was all coming to a head now. Mason had always been calm, collected, practically untouchable. But now his arrogance felt like a mask, and I was ready to tear it off. Lena, you're here, he said, his voice soft and knowing. His eyes darted to Grant, who stood silently beside me, his face grim. I didn't think you'd actually come. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I knew now. I had seen the pieces fall into place, heard the whispers behind closed doors. My husband's betrayal had been just the beginning of a much darker conspiracy. Mason had known about it all. He had been orchestrating it. And now it was my turn to play the game. Tell me everything, Mason, I demanded, my voice cutting through the tension in the room. I'm done with secrets. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him, as though he were enjoying this moment of power. You've already pieced it together, haven't you? He said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. The affair was never the real issue. The real game, Lena, was always bigger. People like you, like Henry, were just pawns. We all have our roles. Not anymore, I spat, stepping closer to him. I'm done being anyone's pawn. Mason smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they've already won. You really think you've uncovered it all? The money laundering? The connections? It goes deeper than you think. You've been played by everyone, Lena, including Grant. I turned sharply to Grant, my heart skipping a beat. The betrayal cut deeper than I could ever imagine. He had been there from the beginning, helping me, guiding me. But what if he had been using me this whole time? My eyes narrowed, searching his face for any sign of truth. But he wouldn't meet my gaze. Grant, I whispered, the word tasting like acid on my tongue. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. Lena, I'm sorry, but you were never supposed to get this far. I never wanted you involved in this. It's not supposed to be your fight. I took a step back, the world around me spinning. My mind was reeling, but a small part of me, the stronger part, took control. The truth was no longer important. It was too late for that. What mattered now was what I was going to do with all the pieces of this shattered life. Enough with the games, Mason, I said, my voice steady now. Tell me what's next. He leaned forward, the smirk fading as he shifted into a more serious posture. The next step, Lena, is you make a choice. Walk away from all of this. Live your life. Go back to your old life before you knew about Henry's crimes, about me, about any of this. Or you take the information I have and you come after me. You come after all of us. I felt the weight of his words sink into me. If I walk away, what happens to Henry? Mason's eyes flickered, his smile returning, but it was colder now. Nothing. He gets to walk away with his reputation intact. His business. His life. Everything he's worked for. All you have to do is let it go. I swallowed hard. The betrayal was a physical ache now, deep in my chest. But somewhere, deep down, I knew there was only one option. There was no going back to the woman I used to be, the woman who let people like Mason and Henry control her life. I was done. You don't get to decide that for me, I said, my voice breaking through the fog in my mind. I'm going to fight. I'll tear it all down. For the first time, I saw fear flash across Mason's face. It was quick, but it was there. I had a choice, and it was mine to make. I turned to Grant, my eyes locking onto his. You can stay here and help him destroy what's left of my life, or you can help me take him down. Your choice. Grant looked away, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. I had never been more certain about anything in my life. The stakes were high, but for the first time in a long time, I was in control. Grant nodded slowly, as though finally realizing the weight of what he had to do. You're right, he said, his voice soft. It's time to take him down. The tension in the room shifted. For a moment, everything felt suspended. The air crackled with anticipation, with the knowledge that everything I'd built, everything I'd lost, was leading to this moment. Mason's facade cracked. You have no idea what you're dealing with. They won't stop. I don't care anymore, I said, stepping toward him, my heart racing. I'm not afraid of you. And with that, the last of the lies unraveled. Mason's power crumbled beneath the weight of my determination. I had made my choice. I had taken control of my own life. And now I was going to tear down the empire of lies one piece at a time. As I walked out of the office, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had found something stronger than all the secrets, all the betrayals myself. In the end, it's not the lies that define us, but the strength we find in exposing them.